Welcome back to another episode of Bossy, Brilliant, Badass. My name is Lisa Lindsay, and I'm here with my satiated co-host, Liz Green. Hey, Liz.
Hey, Lisa, how are you?
I'm well. All right, quick question for you. Did you eat today?
Yes.
What?
Yes. So I had 2 bananas and a strawberry plain yogurt smoothie.
So you ate. I did
What
not.
about you?
I did not.
You didn't eat?
It
Are
is
you starving?
5. I am going to go eat a whole cow right now. Or maybe not. Because.
Right. Because now that we heard from Irene what eating is all about, what the cravings are all about, are you really hungry? Are you trying to, is it head hunger, heart hunger, or actual stomach hunger? I guess, what kind of hunger is yours right now? That sounds like
it's definitely stomach hunger, that's for sure. But, you know, there might be some questions that I might need to ask myself to make sure that, you know, my day no longer starts to end up like this. And the reason why, I'll just frame it for everybody. We're finishing up our recording with our guest, and it's about 5 p.m. in New York City time. So, you know, it's pretty late in the day. I have gone through this whole day, and I started early. I started at 8. So I've gone all day. I had some tea, I had some water, but did not eat yet. So but I think I'm not so unusual. Yeah. Right.
Not unusual at all. I mean, I didn't eat much either, as you heard.
I was going to say that. I mean, you didn't eat much either. So this is
it's like we get busy, right? As entrepreneurs and small business owners, coaches, we get busy. And sometimes if we don't really make it a priority or think about it as a priority, maybe the day will slip by, and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, so I'm eating this, I'm ordering this, I'm getting this. And that's maybe not the best choice or the most loving choice.
Oh, I love that you brought that in. Oh, I love it. I think we've dropped some hints here for the episode.
Yeah.
Listen, if you can't tell that we are excited about this one, we are excited about this one. This is a really good one.
Ladies. We all like to eat, right? At least every woman I know. And how to reframe this, how to really listen for what kind of hunger is it? And just taking that pause. My gosh, I just love this conversation with Irene. She is fantastic. And I learned so much about food and eating and cravings. So without further ado, let's bring her on. So Irene Pace is a trauma-informed nutrition professional with nearly 20 years experience. And she coaches people who are high achievers and eager to get control of their eating. And she's also an entrepreneur.
One more thing before we bring her on completely. Irene did tell us that she wants to offer anybody listening to the show right now a free 30-minute consult. If you get in touch with her and just let her know that you heard about her from Bossy, Brilliant, and Badass, you'll be able to get a free consultation with her. So highly encourage it. Take advantage of that.
Yeah, and that information will also be in the show notes, how to get in touch with her. So let's bring her on.
Irene, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So good to have you. So Irene, you are fairly unique, at least for me. I've never heard of a trauma-informed nutritionist. So what the heck is that?
It is, yeah, it's a bit of a unique term. And it's the word trauma-informed is one you may be hearing a little bit more often when we're talking about different types of services or workplaces. And the idea is that you incorporate the idea that the folks you're working with have trauma as part of their history in the way you engage with them. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to food, it has a really unique place because food is one of those things that can become almost like a coping tool that we use if we're navigating challenging things in our lives. So it's really not uncommon for someone to be seeking support with food stuff, and that same person to also have some type of trauma in their history that may be present kind of underneath the food stuff. So that's where that word comes from. And that's kind of part of the work that I do, is being aware of that. element of it.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's fascinating. So when you're working with clients, are you doing anything specifically different with them than I guess a regular nutritionist would do? If that makes sense as a question.
It does make sense. I think the work with me, it's certainly the work I do with clients is different than what you might expect if you were signing on with the nutritionist. So it's less about what's on your plate and meal plans and how many macros and should I have more of this and less of that. That there's a place for that kind of work. The place that I work in is a lot more around why are you eating? So what is it that's having you have the draw towards food the way it is, the cravings that you have, the kind of seemingly nonsensical eating behavior? Like, I'm a smart person. Why is it that I find myself, I can run a company all day long or, lead my team through COVID. And then the bag of chips beats me at 10 p.m. every night. Like what is that
Right.
all about? Right.
Right. It's almost like, especially for leaders and, you're a leader of your company or what have you. But then when that bag of chips is calling or that cupcake or what have you, that takes the spot of the leader and we become powerless, or at least I'll speak for myself. I do. Definitely.
Yeah. It becomes this thing that is kind of baffling until we can start to wrap some sense around it. But it feels like you're out of integrity. It feels like this disconnection, like this doesn't align with who I believe myself to be and the way that I show up in all these other places in my life. And it seems defeating that you could be beat by something seemingly so simple. So there's that element that, that I navigate with clients in the work too.
Right,
Yeah.
right. That's great.
So yeah, I think I agree. That's fantastic. I'm quite fascinated by this whole idea. But all right, so then let's get into it because you mentioned the sort of my next question, which is, all right, well, why do we eat the way we do?
Yeah, it's an exercise that begins with an awareness practice. So when I'm working with clients, that's really the first place we start is let's put aside the idea or expectation of making any change in your eating whatsoever to start with. So the practice right now in the beginning is not to change anything, just leave it as it is. And we go into this mode of like scientific mode, put your lab coat on or your scientist kind of curiosity about you. And let's explore when you feel that pull to food, the impulse to eat, a craving, what is going on for you in that moment? And allow that kind of pull. I call it the pull. And then I kind of jokingly refer to it like, imagine it's like someone showing up at your door, right? So this pull has arrived. You don't have to be happy they're there, but you need to welcome, you acknowledge that they're there. Like, hello, pull. Okay, there you are. It's like opening the door and saying, I see you. Now let's just get curious and say, what might be going on for me here in this moment that I'm feeling that thing, that pull towards food? Do you know what I'm talking about when I say pull? Like, can you feel what? Yeah,
absolutely. It's so fascinating too, right? Because I think that a lot of people, myself included, have that pull, as you say, and sometimes it almost feels like an addiction, like it's an uncontrollable pull in a lot of ways. What do you say to that? For folks that think there could be an addiction quality to that.
Yeah, I think it totally makes sense. And you're hitting on something that from a physiology point of view, absolutely makes sense. It's the part of your brain that gets activated or lit up when you eat in that impulsive way, when you have that, trifecta combo of sugary, salty, fatty foods. That combination of food actually stimulates the same part of your brain that's stimulated by drugs or any of those other types of impulsive behaviors. So we have this, what's called a pleasure and reward center in your brain. And some people talk about dopamine hits. That's that same kind of thing. And in order to feel regulated and well in our day-to-day lives, we need to have a certain level of hits in that center in our brain. And the healthy, quote unquote, healthy way to get those hits is through human connection, through conversation, through doing work that's aligned for you, through intimacy, through exercise and rhythmic movements. Those kinds of things all light up that center. At the same time, drugs, alcohol, that fatty, salty, sweet combo of foods, other types of behaviors like, chronic scrolling on your phone or shopping, retail therapy, we call it. All of those kinds of things also activate that same reward center. So if you're not meeting the number of hits you need in a day with those more kind of healthy types of activations, you will fill the space that's left with things like food. So
interesting.
Yeah.
I've never heard it said quite like that before. That the number of hits, right? And what you're, if you're in the quote healthy hits, and that you make up for it with the other hits. That's interesting too. So say if there's
I know, I'm like,
there's 3 more I haven't hit. I'm like, all right,
let's go get
cream out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I need a couple more hugs or else I'm gonna get my ice cream out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Fascinating.
And you can use it that way. You can use it that way. Like I encourage clients to kind of reframe what this pull to food or this craving is, because we've really learned to think of a craving as something you dread, right? Like something you don't want to have happen. I don't want to have to crave anything. When I start with a client and ask them, like, what does success look like to you? Oftentimes they're saying, well, when I don't crave, excuse me, donuts anymore, or when I don't crave chips anymore, or when the cravings are gone, then I'll know it's success. And what I invite you to consider is you've kind of, if food is a thing for you and you have this pull to food, then you've kind of got this onboard, like dashboard indicator light that shows up when there's something there that you need to tune into, when you need to pay attention to. So if that dashboard indicator light is going off, like I'm getting this really strong, intense pull to food, it's a sign for me to say, I need to fill this bucket. I need to get some more hits in some way. And I can do that with food, recognizing that food is going to work in the moment. It is a solution, maybe not the best solution long-term, but it will achieve what you're asking it to do in the moment. You're going to get that hit from food.
Right.
And if I understand that other things can also get me that hit, do I want to choose one of those other things instead?
Right. Right. And isn't it most common? Sorry, Lisa, I'm like,
no, go ahead.
I'm not giving you a chance here. I notice, with a lot of my clients that they feel this pull later on in the day, like in the evening or like after dinner, watching a movie. What does that mean?
Yeah. And it's so common. So there's a couple of things that are usually present with that evening time eating, like the one where you've been good, quote unquote, good all day. And then supper comes and you kind of eat supper and then you eat your way through till bedtime until you drop onto the pillow. Right. And that combination, there's a couple of things going on. For some of us, it's that quiet of the night is the first time we've had a moment to pause in our day, right? Like work is done. If you've got kids at home, kids are in bed. If you've got a partner at home, maybe they're occupied with something and you've just got this first window of the day where you're alone with your thoughts in a space that allows any stuff that you have going on in your life can feel a lot more acute in that moment. Like it comes to the surface. And when you're having that feeling, food is one of the things that can shift, like it can shift you out of it. It shifts your physiological and your emotional state. So it makes sense that we get in this habit of kind of throwing food at it at that time of night, right? It's a way that we help to regulate ourselves. So that's one of the things that potentially could be going on. The other one that's common is and Lisa, I think we might have talked about this a little bit when you and I connected, but this idea of what type of hunger you're feeling in the moment. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked about that. And that was kind of where I wanted to go next. I was like, okay, so because I remembered you kind of mentioned something like there's different types of hunger. And I'm like, oh, tell me more. So I'm curious about like what they are, number one, and when they tend to happen and what they tend to do. Because I feel like for me, I end up in a slightly different place with that. I totally resonate with the idea that it's night that hits you. And I find that I have a slightly different thing. I will go all day. I will go all day and not eat. Like all day and not eat, but Lord help me. Right? And then it's everything that is wrong. Right? It's everything that it's wrong. And it's like real hunger, I would say. I mean, I don't know what the 3 types of hunger are yet, but it's real hunger because I hadn't eaten all that. So obviously I'm hungry, but then I'm fairly confident you're about to tell me some other things are going on too.
Yeah. Well, you've hit on one of the big ones. And this is a pattern, I think, that it shows up in everybody, but certainly in my entrepreneurial clients who have this. It's like a blessing and a curse at times that we have all this flexibility and autonomy in how we run our day, right? Like, whereas other folks who have roles or jobs where eating times are structured in a way, and certainly over COVID, being home working, I mean, we're all just arm's length from the fridge that's full of, jumbo sized Costco bags of all of our favorite things, right? So the temptation is huge. But yeah, we've learned to suppress or ignore our hunger cues. We've gotten really, really good at it. The days are busy. I have stuff to do. Eating is like a job I just don't have time to look after. For some folks, it comes from actually being in a role where you can't access food. So I have clients who are lawyers, and then in that role, they're in a courtroom. You can't. Getting a big rumbly tummy.
Judge, I'm sorry, Judge. Hold on. I need to go get a snack.
Snack time.
That's right. Can you hold that thought for a minute? Right? Like there are times in our lives where you're in the middle of a board meeting, or you're leading something, or you're doing something where you've just learned that in the name of business, I need to suppress this thing because I can't have a grumbly tummy affecting my focus or whatever it is. So we get really good at not paying attention to that hunger cue. And then, like you said, by the time we get to the end of the day, it's like, game on, man.
All hell breaks loose.
Like eating all the things, just all the things. Yep. So yeah. So to tie this back to the 3 types of hunger, here's the 3 types of hunger. Let's just get everybody's curiosity, itched with that one. So the first type you've identified is stomach hunger. So that's like your legitimate physiological hunger. That food is actually the thing that's meant to solve that, right?
Right.
The second type of hunger is what I call head hunger. And head hunger, as you can imagine, comes from a thought. So it's generated by, it's breakfast, I should eat something. It's, I'm having a coffee, I have, a bagel or a muffin or a scone when I have a coffee. So there's like a pairing or a habitual pairing of food. We're coming up on the holidays. Maybe there's a particular type of food or meal that you associate with Christmas. I have turkey, or so it's this learned patterning that's generated from a thought. Usually there's the word should in there somewhere. So I should have lunch. I should have dinner. I should do this. That's your head hunger. The third type of hunger, as you can imagine, where do you think we're going with this one?
Heart, emotional. Yeah, man.
You got it. Yeah. Heart hunger, right? So this is your emotional hunger, which can be both the lighter emotions, like celebration, reward, I'm happy, right?
Champagne.
All the ways food's associated with that. And then the other emotions, one that's shown up a lot over COVID as heart hunger. I don't know. What do you think that one might be?
I know, Liz, go ahead. Tell us. I'm having Liz answer.
You're going to have Liz answer this one. Yeah. What's bringing everybody to the fridge these days?
Loneliness?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Loneliness, boredom, just that
lack of connection.
Yeah. So that heart hunger
fear.
is showing up. Yeah. Fear, uncertainty, worry, all of those things. So you name it, if it has that, you know, emotional quality to it, that's your heart hunger. So how is this helpful? I mean, the way this is helpful when you're thinking about that evening time eating is if you come to the evening time and you have you're not eating all day, you got stomach hunger on board, you're in this habit of eating that way at night, you've got head hunger on board, or let's say you eat when you're watching your favorite Netflix show or something, right? Like you have this pairing of food with something. And then you've got this, the first thing we talked about, this loneliness or this quiet of the night kind of feeling of processing your day. You've got like the trifecta of hungers going on there, right?
Yep.
You got the head, you got the heart, and you got the stomach. So what you can do if you identify that is you can start addressing them one at a time. So by looking at eating and feeding yourself better through the day, you can look after that stomach hunger. So you're not coming to the evening times in such a huge calorie deficit that you've got this really, really strong pull, because you're not winning that battle, right?
Nope. You got to
Well,
eat.
no.
You got to eat.
Well, yeah. And, you know, that's happened to me a million times too, Lisa. And then I'll just order. I'm like, oh, I'm so starving. I need to order. And then I order everything under the sun. And it all comes and I'll eat it all. So it's like, and it's really fun. I have to admit, I love it. But yeah, but then my critic comes in afterwards and says, okay, look what you did. Right?
Yeah.
You're
Yep.
too
It's
full.
sort of like,
You don't feel good.
you have the food hangover. It's like, why did I even do that? Does it even make sense? What is wrong with you? And then you sort of, I like where you're going with this, Liz. Then you sort of start to spiral into these other things that that are just never good for us, right? We then end up in these places that are, right? Just thinking about it, I'm like,
yeah. And I know I have a critic sometimes that might say, oh, well, you already had that, so who cares? You might as well just have that then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just throw in the towel. I'm
just
eating all the
other
things
one
now. I've already,
You know what? You ate
See the whole box.
Yeah, eat the fifth one.
That's right. Yeah. Like who eats cookies by the single? We eat cookies by the row, people, right? Like, let's just do this.
Like, what are you doing?
Or by the box. Yeah. Yeah. So it's all of this kind of mental game that's going on in there. So the entry kind of to practice and shift this is, first of all, identifying when you've got that pull going on. So often it's like, we wake up with like, you know, crumbles of Doritos all over our face and our hand in the empty bag. And we're like, what happened to me? How did I get here? And the awareness is just not there. Right. So the first practice is to allow yourself to recognize that pull. And the practice, I call it greet the pull, like literally say, hey, pull, there you are. I see you. And that can happen from the first moment you feel that kind of, you know, calling to food, to the moment you're standing in front of the fridge with your hand on the, you know, the handle. It can be after you've started eating, or anywhere along that continuum from the first pull to food to when you're finished eating. If you become aware in any one of those moments and stop and say, okay, here it is. I see you. And then just let what comes there show up. So it can be that practice is really identifying the pull and greeting it. And once you've done that, let yourself do whatever you need to do from that point forward. If you need to eat. Yeah.
Yeah. I really like that, Irene, because what I'm hearing is just welcoming it. Don't have any criticism around it. Just what is there. Okay. And then just kind of see from there what is really happening inside, but without having a judgment around it. I think that's super important, to really allow yourself to be present for what is that pull? What do I really need? Is it food? And it very well might be, as you say, or it could be something else. It could be the heart emotional pull, the head pull. But I like that where you take the pause, go inside and just see, okay, what is this pull?
Yeah, what's going on here? There's a need of some sort. And a lot of us have baggage from somewhere back in our history that having needs is not okay, right? Like it's
Right.
burdensome to have a need for something. It's
So if somebody else, yep.
yeah. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of things that are tangled in here that, you know, we tease apart as we do the work together. At the same time, if we go back to the very first question we talked about, like, why do we eat this way? We can kind of weave in all of the pieces that we've talked about to this point. Like, you learn to use food as a solution at some point in your life when you didn't have other capabilities to deal with whatever it was that you were navigating at the time. So if we pull the pieces together and say, we know that food lights up that pleasure and reward center. We know we get the dopamine hit from it from a physiological point of view. So food actually works as a solution to solve something for us. And if you look back to childhood or back to a difficult time in your life, here's where trauma can be the entry point to beginning to use food if you didn't have another tool, because it works. So it was an adaptive solution at some point in your life. And this is a point I think that especially my entrepreneurial clients who identify as this thing, right? I'm a smart person. Why is this getting me into trouble? Let's reframe this for a minute and say, you are a smart person because you actually landed on a solution that worked. It was an adaptive tool at the time you chose it, right? So you were smart for choosing this and continuing to do it because it actually works.
But it no longer serves you at this point. So now we got to try to do something about it. And I actually love that way of thinking about it because it supports the feeling that we think about ourselves. Like, yeah, I feel that way. I am very smart. I know I shouldn't be eating this way. And why? I don't know. I don't get it. What's going on? What's going on? So those tools so far are really helpful, but then just the mindset shift of saying, yeah, it worked for you in the past. It's no longer serving us. So now let's flip it a little bit. Love that.
Right. No longer serving it. And you probably have different tools now that you didn't have back then.
When you chose that. Excellent. Yeah, I love
when
that.
You chose that.
You've nailed it. It's, it was adaptive then. Now it's become maladaptive. The cost of doing it that way is too great for you now. And just like you said, Liz, like you are a different person now with a different set of tools, a different set of capabilities, likely significantly more wisdom than you would have at the time, and a different level of autonomy. You are a grown adult.
Ass woman.
I wanted to say, I'm like, can I swear on here?
I was waiting for you to say ass. A grown adult woman.
You're a grown-ass adult, right? Yeah. You can choose to eat whatever you want, whenever you want, as much as you want, anytime you want. Yet we take that permission away from ourselves. And when we do that, all you do is wake up the inner toddler in you that then wants to eat the whole box of cookies, right? So let's not do that to ourselves and step into the permission we have and recognize what's gone on here. It worked for me. It was adaptive. Now I'm brilliant for having chosen it. Now I'm also brilliant for recognizing that it is now maladaptive and it no longer serves me. And now I can pull out all these other tools and capabilities I have to learn to do this a different way, to learn to identify what is the need under here and what can I do to look after myself instead of the food, knowing the food is always a choice because it works.
Right. And it sounds like also what you're saying is these younger parts of us, I work in internal family systems with that model. And the younger parts of us the eating younger parts don't necessarily know that there's, like you said, an adult woman in charge that knows what's going on, who has tools. That younger toddler or 5-year-old or 12-year-old or what have you might just only know that eating makes me feel better. And then the other piece is what happens when, say parents, you're having your emotions and then parents, okay, here's a cookie, be quiet, or here's a donut. Okay, go take your little bag of chips and go in the corner and what have you. So it's, that becomes really kind of ingrained in our bodies, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And you've hit on another big piece of this puzzle is, what are the messages you took away about food from your childhood? What were you shown? And it's not always that you were told it. Sometimes you were. Maybe you had a parent in the household who was always dieting. Maybe you had a household where, the working parent came home and celebrated the end of a day with a beer, right? Maybe you had an experience where, like you said, how many of us, like, think back to even you'd go to the doctor, even the dentist, and you'd get something sweet at the end of the appointment, or right? Or you're going, like,
how off is that?
I know.
Go to the dentist, you leave it. Here's a bag of candy.
It's
You did
wild.
a great job.
And even now, I'm, the number of times I hear from my kids at school that there's, it's a pizza party for doing something good, or the treats are rewards at school are food, and they're not broccoli, folks. Like, we're rewarding with, we're creating a lot of energy and history and really brain wiring around food that we then need to untangle as adults. So once you have that lens, you'll see it everywhere. I mean, it really is ingrained in our society.
Yeah. What do you think about, say, taking a food group and just going cold turkey? I'm not going to have that anymore. I'm not going to have that anymore. I'm not going to have it in the house. So therefore, I'm not going to be compelled to eat it. That's what I do. I don't have anything in the house. I haven't had, I don't really eat sugar, white flour, anything like that. I haven't for years, but I still want it, but I don't have it in the house.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a strategy that, there's not a one answer to that one. The way I encourage clients to look at this piece is sort of two ways. One is the job of the work we're doing together is to expand your toolbox, right? So we're looking to build out the number of things you have to use to look after whatever it is that's going on inside of you that you've been using food for. So you now have food as a tool, and we're going to build out what are these other things we can do to look after ourselves. At the same time, we can set up what I like to call loving guardrails for ourselves. So what the diet world often has us do is what you've talked about, is say, none of this, never this again, don't do that. And even as I'm saying that, what's happening in your body or thoughts around, as soon as you say to yourself, one of mine is chocolate almonds, I'm never having chocolate almonds again, right away, it's like, chocolate almonds.
I'm like, where can I go get some chocolate almonds right now?
Yeah, you want it even more, right?
You want it even more.
Yeah. As a general rule, I don't believe in this idea of deprivation, just because I feel like you generate the desire even more. And I think that in all sort of walks of life, like, it's not just about food, just the idea of taking something away. I think if you allow yourself to kind of have it and try to practice moderation, that might be better versus than the complete, like, I'm not doing this again ever.
Well, yeah, because it feels like deprivation, right? Absolutely. For me personally, I felt like I had to give up sugar because it feels very addictive. Like, once I have it a few times, and I really want it. But if I don't have it for a while, I don't really think about it as much. So what I'll probably have instead is still sugary, but maybe some fresh fruit or something like that. So it kind of takes the place, but it's not like a cupcake.
Yeah. And I love this, the conversation here is hitting on all the different pieces of how we navigate this. And the key piece I'm hearing here is, at the end of the day, the plan is for you. And the question you want to ask yourself is, how is that working for me?
Right.
And this is a beautiful example of, for one person, not having the thing around works for them. And for another person, it just wakes up that inner toddler who wants to then, like, get their hands on that thing as quickly as possible. So a couple of tools that you can build in here in terms of navigating this. So the first one is, this idea of loving guardrails, and language really matters in this stuff. Like one of the things I do with clients all the time is I call it a language upgrade. So we're in a conversation and I'll just kind of go bing, 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 bing. Okay, language upgrade. Let's shift the language here a little bit, because we're talking about brain wiring stuff here. So the language becomes something we attach a whole bunch of meaning to, and certain pathways light up based on the language. So even the word moderation for me feels like deprivation. Like it still feels like something's being taken away. If I use the word loving guardrail, what I'm doing is I'm saying to myself, a really easy example to think about is if you're an alcoholic working on not drinking, you wouldn't put yourself in the path of a house full of open bottles. That would just be an unkind thing for you to do for yourself, right? So the loving guardrail says, this is what I'm working on. The kindest, most loving thing I can do for myself is not have that thing at the ready in my house, right? So what you're talking about, Liz, it sounds like you've got a loving guardrail for yourself that says, listen, I'm not going to have these things in my home because it feels like I'm creating a situation that is just not kind for me to have to navigate that decision over and over and over and over again, right? At the same time, permission says, if you do want to have something that's sweet, maybe you go out and get it at your favorite restaurant, or you create something that allows you to be able to have it in a way that feels safe to you. So
I love that. I love that so much. I think
I
love that more than anything else I've ever heard on the show.
Well, don't say that now, Liz. Jeez.
Wow. Jeez, I'm blushing here, ladies.
Yeah.
No,
are you
I love it.
I
love it, because I think if I take it and I apply it to other places, like Liz was saying, like anything else on the show, it makes so much sense, because what you're doing is being kind to yourself versus all the other things we were saying, depriving, like all those other things, which, maybe even if they don't sound like that to our ears, might sound like that to our brain. But loving guardrail does not, right?
Loving guard.
So, I mean, it's brilliant. Like, let's cut this and make sure we have it everywhere. Like, seriously.
And it's being loving and kind to yourself, not like, you can't do that. Loving and kind. And then I like the other piece, you know what? Then you can have it at your favorite restaurant.
Right.
You don't have to have tons of it in your fridge. You can have it at your favorite restaurant, and just knowing that, all right, I'm not never going to have it again in my life. I can have it in a way that feels safe and loving.
Yeah, because it's still fully available to you. Still fully available to you, just, in a different way. I love that. So I feel like we've gotten into some of your principles of how we sort of transform how we eat, right? So, and make decisions about our food. So I feel like we've already talked about one of them. I know you said there are a couple more, 3 of them. So
yeah. There's three what I call guiding principles. And these are, you can use them as you're planning and looking ahead about eating, or considering, following some certain way of eating or style of eating, or you can use them in the moment of choice when you're faced with a decision around food. And these are grounded in the idea, the understanding, the truth that you have to eat every day that you're alive, which is different than some of these other things we try to manage, like alcohol, for instance. You don't have to have alcohol. You have to have food. So the tools you use to navigate food can't be the same as the ones you use for something that you really don't need to have. So how do we navigate food when it can be problematic for us, but we need to have it? These are the principles that I pull in here. The first one is, we've talked about, how's that working for me? So to ask yourself that question and really look at and own the permission you have to make food feel for you the way you want it to feel, because you have to eat. So how's it working for me can be if I'm looking on increasing energy or increasing focus, or I want body composition change or fat loss. Is this thing working to do the thing I'm asking it to do?
Right.
For me and my body and my life.
me, because we're all different, right?
Yeah.
So what me looks like is different to Liz, is different to Irene. Love that.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah.
And we so often try to just take the plan that works for somebody else, even some nutrition guru online, or, you know, coworker at the office who's lost 20 pounds or whatever.
Right.
We just take their thing and then are
Wholesale.
surprised when it doesn't work
doesn't
for
work.
us. Right.
Yes.
Right.
So really dig into, how is this working for me? So that's number one. The second one is, does this feel good to me?
Mm-hmm.
And good in the moment, but also good tomorrow. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm glad that you clarified
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because good tomorrow is very important.
Yeah.
Well,
good
I think
tomorrow.
I think that's sort of, I'm going to use the word regret. I think that's really where the issues kind of come in, right? It feels really good now. I mean, I'm telling you, because I know it does. I mean, it's called fried chicken for a reason, but, but you know, tomorrow I might have a whole different feeling about all that fried chicken. So yeah, I love that.
And it's also built in this idea that, you know, if you build a meal plan or eating strategy that sucks, you're basically building that sucky feeling into your life every day forever, because you have to eat. So if you're going to build this thing, let's build it in a way that actually feels good to you, because it's your life. And if if you can release yourself from that struggle and kind of suckiness around food, you've just eliminated a whole bunch of suckiness that you would otherwise have to face every single day. Right.
But sometimes what about though, because I had to go on a detox for something, and that was sucky, right? Like it was like 2 Brussels sprouts and a couple of spears of asparagus and whatever. I was on detox for something. That was sucky. But wow, were the rewards great. Like I felt amazing. This thing I had to flush out of my body, that was successful. And so the rewards, and plus I lost some weight, the rewards were great, but it was sucky throughout that experience.
Yeah. So, you know, let me tell you the third one, and we'll play with that example and see where we go with it. So the third one is, can I imagine myself doing it this way for the rest of my life?
Okay.
So
Irene, you're a pro. You are a pro.
You have everything covered.
You like queued that one up for me so beautifully, Liz. It was almost like we planned that, right? So yeah, and it, when you look at something like that, you can say, how's this work for me? Or how's this working for me? And if it's a shorter term thing like that, something that you've done before, and you can say, you know, when I do this for a short amount of time, I know I feel this way on the other side of it. And so the way I like to think about these things is, it's like, it's worth the cost of admission for me to do this thing for this short amount of time. And when we're looking more broadly about the way we want to build our eating plan, if you want to call it that, build out the way we eat and relate to food on a day-to-day basis forever, we really do want to look at, how's it working for me? Does it feel good to me? Because I want my life to feel good. And newsflash, like our lives are supposed to feel good to us, even though sometimes it's like, hey, I didn't get that memo. What do you mean? Yeah. My life is supposed to feel good to me. I thought life is supposed to be hard and struggle and suck. Like,
I know, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
So does this feel good to me? And then when you ask your question that, can I imagine myself doing it this way for the rest of my life? Of course, sometimes we're not actually going to do these things for the rest of our lives, but the question brings you to a place that sometimes the response is, hell's no. Like, I do not want to be counting calories for the rest of my life. I do not want to be measuring every morsel of food I put into my mouth from now and forever. And if that's your response to the thing you're about to engage your energy in building in terms of your diet, you may be putting your energy in the wrong place. So it kind of gets at that piece. So does that make sense as I'm sharing that?
Yes. Does to me.
100%. 100%.
Excellent.
It's fantastic. Wow. All right, Irene. So let's talk, because I think this is a great concept and I've been using it in another arena, but but it's relevant to coaching. As a matter of fact, this is what we talk about when we're talking about coaching, the difference between knowing and doing. So how do we implement?
Yeah. So this is where, I'm going to share a little experience from my life that brought me more deeply into this work that I'm doing now, the way I'm doing it. I was probably about 15 years into my career as a dietitian at the point I landed in a really difficult space with food myself. So it was a time when I had a lot of personal stuff going on. My marriage was breaking down. Career-wise, I had been home with kids for a really long period of time and was feeling disconnected from doing work in the way I love. And I was on a drive home from a friend's house. It was in the evening time. It was about a 40-minute drive. And I made 3 stops in that 40-minute drive to get food. So stop number 1, pull off at the coffee shop, donut place, and 2 donuts down the hatch, powdered sugar flying everywhere. By the next, one of the beautiful things where we are in this part of Canada, well, Canada all over.
I knew you were Canadian. I was going to ask you a couple times in. I'm like, I heard the boots, the hooves, the process instead of process.
Oh, right.
I knew I liked this girl for a reason. I'm Canadian as well.
Oh, you are? Yeah. Well, there's a Tim Hortons like every second, right? Off ramp on the highway. There's a donut shop. So in this 40-minute drive, I had lots of options to pull off at these donut shops. So stop 1, I went through the drive-through. Stop 2, I thought, no, I'll get out of the car and I go in and order more donuts as if I'm bringing them home to my kids or something, right? 3 donuts in the car and they're gone. And then I made 1 more stop at a convenience store and got 2 Haagen-Dazs bars. I'm in my car and I probably ate, 3,000 calories worth of food in this super impulsive, really awful feeling way. And, in the moment I was so in it, but afterwards looking back, I was just like, something else is going on here, because if this is about knowing what to do, I wouldn't be here.
Right.
Like I spend my days helping people not do exactly what I was
100%.
just doing in my car. So what else is it that drives us to food in this way? And it was really the start of my deeper exploration of this from a neurology point of view, like what's going on in our brain, what's going on in our bodies, what is it that has us turning to food like this. That's kind of landed me in really discovery of the method that I'm using now with clients to get at this in a way that it's not about the food that's on your plate. It's not about me teaching you something new. You could Google how to eat well and come up with any diet. If you were to follow it even 60% of the time, you're probably eating better than you might be right now. It's not about knowing more. It's about getting in that space in between to say, how do we actually do this day to day in our lives and eat in the way that really matters to us?
Yeah. And what I like to think about when I think about the knowing doing gap is like, what's actually sitting in that gap? What's sitting in there that we need to sort of uncover and understand? And I mean, you've obviously already given us some questions to ask about that and some guiding principles to help us over that hump. I mean, Irene, this has been one of the most excellent conversations we've ever had on this show. I love it. It's about a topic that we can all sort of relate to, right? As evidenced by the way Liz and I were trying to get at you, right? So as we sort of wrap up here, what is the big takeaway? If our audience takes nothing away from this conversation, what is the one thing you want them to hear from you?
Yeah. The one thing I want you to hear is that if you are using food in this way, if you're eating impulsively, if you find yourself drawn to eat in ways that feel misaligned with who you are or what matters to you, trust that you're doing it for a reason that makes sense. So at some point in your life, you landed on food as a solution because it works. You're not bad. You're not broken. You're not weird in some way. You're actually quite brilliant because you're a human that has figured out a solution, and allow yourself to move from that place. I am a smart human. I landed on a solution that worked, and I am now a person who's capable of learning to do it a different way. And from there, you become not the person who's failed at this thing again and again. You become a person who is determined, and you're coming back at it because you're capable of doing difficult things. And now you've just got a little bit more information to know that it was adaptive, and now it's maladaptive, and you can do something about that to change this for yourself.
Great. Excellent takeaway. Thank you, Irene. So where can people find you?
Yeah, best place to find me is on my website at irenepace.com. So IRENEPACE.com, or on Instagram. And on Instagram, my handle is the Donutician. So coming off my donut story. So it's DONUTITION. So the Donutician. And I do some fun things on Instagram, and there's videos there that cover some of these topics. And you can reach out to me on either place. So message through Instagram or through the website.
Perfect. Good stuff. All right. So thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for being our badass of the week.
Such a pleasure. You guys are super fun, and I'm really glad to have had a chance to chat with you.
Excellent.